All right, you guys, you DJs ready?
You DJs ready? That's a good one. Good morning. Welcome back to the pod. Matt Kim, Peter Saddington.
What's up, guys?
Happy Thursday morning.
Happy Thursday to you, brother.
We have a lot of stuff on our plate today, and I want to get into it kind of right away. I recently put up a post about Brazil, and a lot of people have been messaging me going, hey, you need to look into Brazil. You need to look into Brazil. And I started digging around. And the more I dug around, I realized I can't find anything.
Oh, really? Media blackout?
Media blackout. And then all of a sudden, you see the headlines that you do find, which are all New York Times, all Washington Post, all BBC. And you're like, wait a second. Anytime those guys are in together, it makes you go,
Maybe there's an agenda.
Maybe there's an agenda.
So you had to do a little bit more digging.
I did a lot of digging, and you have to go deep into the interweb.
I think that actually, just to cut you off real quick, I think that's the one thing that I really appreciate, Matt, about your style and your interest in topics is that you're willing to actually go deep on these, research them, go down through the interwebs, and really kind of get a fuller context, because we live in a world where it's just the title and it's just the subtitle, and that's pretty much what everyone reads. But you're willing to do a lot more research. But I think the community and the audience really appreciates the depth in which you're willing to go. So just want to highlight that.
Well, thank you very much. I had to go deep. I also reached out to several Brazilians to get an idea. Hey, I said, these are my ideas. Does this make sense? Because I'm limited to what I can find. And what I can find is in English.
Yeah, so you're getting some real on-the-ground kind of perspectives.
Correct. Brazilian news is in Portuguese. I can't read Portuguese. If I did a Google Translate, it doesn't translate well. So I need to know if I'm way off base here, if what I conclude based on my research, my reading, if this makes any sense at all.
So Brazil currently isn't on the radar of most Americans.
Correct. And it should be.
Okay, so unpack this for us.
So in 2019 to 2022, there was a extremely conservative and anti-establishment president. His name was Jair Bolsonaro. And throughout this, please fact check me if I'm just butchering anything. Jair Bolsonaro, he was extremely popular and maybe the most popular president in Brazilian history. The left-wing media calls him the Brazilian Trump.
Of course. Now, just to interject, my first reaction to that would be is if the mainstream media is anti-Brazilian president, then it's because they didn't install that president.
Exactly. This is a guy that came up through the people.
Okay.
And 2019 to 2022, he was president of Brazil. During that time, he turned around the economy. He was able to reduce government spending, and he was a huge proponent of law and order.
Interesting. So were those his main running points?
Correct.
Okay.
I am for the people. I have conservative values. Things are going a little too crazy here. We need to turn this country around. We need to make people proud to be Brazilian again.
That sounds very MAGA-ish.
Very MAGA-ish. And
it's called BAGA. No, it's what's it called?
MABA.
MABA. Make Brazil great again. MABA.
And so one of the things he did was he actually expanded legal gun laws.
Oh, interesting.
So he gave citizens the ability to carry their own firearms.
Ooh.
Brazilian was known as one of the most high murder rates in the world.
Yeah, per capita.
Correct.
Yeah.
He gave the ability to carry their own legal guns, and murder rates in Brazil plummeted. You let people protect themselves, people aren't fucking around no more.
Interesting. Interesting how a armed populace makes a polite populace.
Because only the bad guys had the guns.
Interesting. So would you say that the gun legislation that he brought in was a pivotal part of his success, or was it coupled with other things?
I think it was a combination of all.
Okay.
Bringing back the economy. I think during COVID, their economy was one of the few that was declining maybe kind of slower than others. Everyone declined, but their decline was slower. And bringing back social values that are important to the populace, as well as reducing government spending and reducing government overreach.
Right.
He was very anti-establishment.
So he was installed in the 1819 era, which means, I don't know Brazil voting systems or how often they happen, but I'm assuming, or asserting rather, that he's coming up on re-election. Is coming up on that?
So 2022, last year, was the re-election.
Oh, okay. So he had the re-election.
They had the re-election. There was a former president named Lula da Silva. And Lula da Silva was former president of Brazil. He did maybe 1 or 2 terms. Maybe we can look that up. I think he did 2 terms. He was imprisoned for corruption.
Really? But he was part of the kind of the establishment. So why would he go? Establishment people don't go to prison. Usually, if they leave cocaine in a public area or a government area, the 3-letter agencies cover for them, so they wouldn't put him in jail, would they?
He did 8 years, 2 runs.
8 years, 2 runs, and so I'm assuming then term limits are not 8 years.
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah. So he was the establishment guy. He did 8 years. He did 2 terms.
Oh.
And
can you do it 12?
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
Well, yes.
Because if he's running again, yeah.
In 2022, he was by the Supreme Court of Brazil, who is extremely establishment over there, who is basically in charge of the country. They pardoned him. They pardoned Lula and gave him the ability to run again.
Really? So I'm assuming then they overrode probably the Brazilian constitution or something like this.
Correct. In order to give them the ability to run.
Term limits. The president of Brazil serves a term of 4 years and may be reelected for a single consecutive term. This is a 2-term limit, however, is not for life. A former president who served for 2 consecutive terms may run for the presidency again for at least 1 term has elapsed. Interesting. Oh.
So he was given the ability, taken out of prison, and given the ability to run again.
I wonder if that guidance has been updated due to the changes in their laws.
That would be something I'd be very curious about.
Yeah.
He runs for president again. There is a huge election. It is split amongst the populace, and it's so close that it goes into a runoff.
I feel like I kind of sort of remember hearing this like on the fringe,
In the runoff, the Lula ends up winning by the smallest, tiniest of margins.
Oh, the establishment candidate.
Bolsonaro is like, hey, I don't like the way these electric voting machines are running.
That sounds eerily familiar.
The people of Brazil hit the streets. They are furious about this outcome. Again, this guy was super popular. He had a huge support.
And this time they're rallying about it and they're pissed off about it. And this time they have guns.
Correct. They storm the capital city.
No, get out of here.
They do some rioting.
It's like the preamble to January 6th thing.
And Bolsonaro is now banned for running for president again till 2030 for being part of
an insurrection.
Yeah.
Get out of here. You're lying, bro.
I swear to God. You can't make this stuff up.
Everything that Matt just said, if you were listening clearly, everybody out there, smash the like button and subscribe. But for everyone out there, I felt like you were creating a narrative moving up to January 6th, basically. So this was like the entire script for what we had happen here in America.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Oh, I tell you, the world is odd.
So Lula, everyone calls him Lula, so I'm going to call him Lula. Lula is now president.
He's the establishment president.
Establishment president.
Okay.
Very chummy, hanging out with Biden.
Kind of like Biden, I guess.
It's like, career politician type of guy. And now they are joining with Brazil. They're part of BRICS.
BRICS, yeah.
Brazil,
Russia,
India, China, South Africa. They are ditching the US dollar and going off on their own. They are installing and they are rolling out CBDCs within the country.
Central bank digital currencies.
And there was a hacker recently, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, that found the source code and found out that the government has control to shut off your account, remove your money, change your balances. They found it in the code. Can you fact check and look that up for me?
Truly then, The smoking gun is the code,
Correct.
right? And the code is what you're telling me. The code is showing that there's functionality in that code that allows for absolute censorship and absolute control over the monetary supply.
The Supreme Federal Court of Brazil also is requesting or demanding from social media companies in Brazil a list and information about people who follow Bolsonaro.
No way.
That is also out there. You can look that up also, Will.
I'm sure they're doing that in America too, by the way.
Correct. But this is like out there now.
Yeah.
So they want to know who the dissenters are.
Oof.
They're rolling out their digital currency. And this is all the stuff in America. We're like, whoa. Like, this is maybe where we see.
Maybe Brazil, in this example, is truly the preamble to what's happening here in America. Here's the title that Will just threw up here. Brazil can freeze crypto in central bank digital currency pilot program. Quote, peace. Provide public smart contracts and let Brazilians know what the central bank is doing, a Brazilian web developer said. So this is the hacker who got into the back end of the code and said, hey, there's functionality in this that clearly shows that the central bank can control it and shut off stuff. So you're saying that preamble is like the prologue to America and where America is heading. And so this is why people have been pinging you and saying, hey, look at Brazil. Maybe
Correct.
this is the map or the roadmap for what's going to be happening to America. Do you believe that's going to happen?
Yeah. I mean, they've also, Lula has decided that they're going to go over their official spending cap.
Oh.
And they are consolidating all the wealth and they're redistributing it amongst left-wing ideologies.
It's like the liberals' version of reparations in America? Interesting. Wait. Say that again. They're only going to give like kickbacks to a certain type of people?
They are, I don't know if they're giving it back to, but they're investing it in the extreme left ideas.
Oh. It's kind of like George Soros for all those conspiracy theorists. He only throws his money towards left-leaning, very radical ideology.
It's like having an infrastructure bill and cutting out a portion of it for tree equity.
Fair enough.
Kind of like that.
Fair enough, right? So they're earmarking specific massive amounts of funding and these types of things toward these particular objectives, which are within, let's just say, a philosophy or an ideology that is left-leaning.
And why is Brazil so important? They are the fifth largest country in the world, largest country in South America, largest producer of oil in South America, largest producer of grain, aluminum, iron, of all the metals in South America. They have control over the Amazon, which has unlimited resources for future medical research. They are a huge powerhouse of the world, and they have to be taken seriously. And for years, they were like, okay, they're kind of on their own. They were starting to build a reputation, starting to build it back under this new guy, which is like, again, the left wing loves to call him the Brazilian Trump. And 4 years later, all of a sudden, he's gone.
So is he now excommunicado, or is he trying to fight back? Give us a little bit of the backstory there.
There is basically, if you're a politician or a journalist or even on social media, and you are against Lula and you support Bolsonaro, you are either jailed, silenced, or blocked.
Oh, really?
Yes.
They're going that far?
Yes. It is getting extremely, extremely out there. Like super fascist communist that way.
Right. So they're now jailing dissenters is what you're saying.
Correct.
So that is the concern that probably people are bringing to you to say, hey, look, we're about to be moving into an election cycle. Things are going to get so hot, so fast from the political rhetoric, and we're gonna here in the Matkin podcast, we're gonna have a lot of fun with all that rhetoric.
Of course,
certainly. So because when there's a shit stew, sometimes there's a lot of fun stuff that can come out of it, and so if Brazil, in many ways, is kind of like the guide to what's happening to America, is that what people are afraid of? Is that the censorship is going to get ramped up? Because if we were to take a cue from the meta of what Elon's doing, it almost seems like free speech is kind of winning, right? We're getting a slice back of free speech, at least through the mechanism of Twitter. But what you're saying potentially is that censorship and free speech can get even more censored as we move closer to the election, which I feel is going to happen. But number two, are we going to see people jailed for their dissenting, comments? Is that what we're heading towards?
I think it's a combination of two things. One, there are people that have family in Brazil, are from Brazil, that are concerned about what's going on in Brazil. Number two, they see what's happening in Brazil and see the parallels. I mean, it's so similar, right? With what we've been through here.
It's all, the world's a stage, man.
And seeing that, like, we can see where this is going. And they say we're crazy because we say, hey, what if central bank digital currencies come and like try to take over everyone's bank accounts?
It's going to happen.
And they're like, oh, no, that's impossible. Why would the government ever do that? The government loves you. They care, right? And then they're like, wait a second. Another country is doing the same thing, and they didn't care.
So I have two questions I want to unpack from this. First and foremost, do you think CBDCs is a good thing? Let's just get Matt Kim's fresh take on it.
I don't like the idea that the government has control of your money.
Why?
Control.
Well, they already have control, don't they, through fiat?
They do, but you have other ways to get around it if you really choose so. Most people have like an emergency stash at home in cash.
Do you have cash at home?
No. But people have different ways to stash money just in case.
Guys, I know he doesn't have cash. He has gold bars. And he lives at 112 Ridgeway.
But there, at least you have a little bit of control, right? And maybe it's an illusion of control. But even if it's fake control, at least we feel at least a little bit like we have it.
Let's pull on this thread a little bit, because the conspiracy theorists, which frankly put, if we look at the conspiracy theorist hit rate, right now they're batting pretty good, right? All the conspiracies of the last 5-10 years have essentially come true. And so if we pull on this thread, the extreme conspiracy theory is that they're going to control the monetary supply, and they can use that control, that if they don't like what you're saying on Twitter, they don't like what you're saying on Instagram, they can turn off your ability to get money. They get the most extreme, which I thought was a little bit hilarious, but at the same time it's kind of pointing to this issue, is that there's this guy going to McDonald's or something like that, and the McDonald's says, you can't buy McDonald's because you haven't worked out in like 6 months. And it's like, wait. That's a little bit too much control. Do you feel, so here's the thread. Do you think that that's where we're headed, to a point where literally, based on your actions as a citizen of America, that your actions could preclude you or could constrain you from access to services or money in the future? Is that where we're going? Is that where you think we're going?
If you take all of technology of what we know about it now, and you come to a logical conclusion, that's exactly where we go, right?
Well, it's the progressive nature of advancement of technology.
Yeah, we're going to go to social credit scores. Who are you? Who are you engaging with? What are your habits? What are you about? Link that with, central digital currency, where the people that give you the credit score can also control your money. And then, of course, how else do you penalize people? You start docking them credits.
Yeah.
Right? For them, it's just credits. Money becomes meaningless.
Yeah.
And money, the dollar is based on people's faith in the dollar. There's nothing backing the dollar.
Yeah.
We know that.
It's a common shared understanding. That's all it is.
The dollar is valuable because we have faith in the dollar. It doesn't mean anything. They literally just print it whenever they want.
Yeah.
It's because we believe in it. And as faith in the dollar falters, as other countries start running away from it, as people start putting their assets in things like crypto, the amount of people that are moving to crypto shows how little faith there is in the dollar.
You're not wrong.
Right? And if faith in the dollar starts to kind of falter, then the government's naturally like, okay, hey, we have something else for you. Why don't you sign up for this instead? And first you get the early adopters, and then you build up a movement, and you get people on one side going, oh, you guys aren't on this. You guys are you hate us. You guys are bad people. You guys are racist.
Of course.
How are you not going to adopt central digital bank currency? Are you a racist?
Which I forgot in Discord. I told Matt that I would call him the supreme supremacist because he's Asian. And apparently, according to the mainstream media today, Asians are alt-right white supremacists.
That's crazy.
And looking at Matt, he's basically white. I just consider him the supreme supremacist. So that we're going to call you the supreme supremacist from now on, Matt. You are the epitome of white nationalism right here. Guys, take a picture. This is what the face of white nationalism looks like in the future. So we got CBDCs. Where Brazil seems to be kind of like a foreshadowing of what's happening in America. Let's talk about the gun. Let's unpack the guns a little bit because I think that's powerful. I'm a big Second Amendment guy. You probably saw on Twitter. I was at the gun range just a week ago, just getting my reps in. So do you think guns is going to play a big part in Brazil's future, and as a consequence for America, do you think guns is going to be a big part of the political sphere as we move forward into election?
I mean, knowing what we know about Brazil, and I'm not completely familiar with everything in Brazil, but knowing what we know about Brazil, I can only assume that knowing what we know about them, that they're going to go after the guns, right?
Yes.
How do you allow people to legally have a bunch of guns and then an opposing, completely opposite side president comes into power that wants control in the central government and away from the people? I can't imagine any situation where they're like, you know what? Let's let them keep the guns.
Yeah.
They're going to come after the guns. They have to.
Do you think that's going to happen in America, or is the fabric of the Second Amendment too stitched into the cultural kind of platform of America to have a fight over? Or do you think that we're going to end up essentially getting to that point where politicians are really starting to make policies, regulations, legislation? We're really going to see the extraction of people's rights around this? Do you think this is going to happen? Or is this one of those NRA conspiracies where they're always, yelling Chicken Little, the sky is falling, the worst thing ever? Do you think we're invariably going to end up getting there?
The logical common sense says that you don't go after the guns from the people because there are too many guns that are very passionate about their right to guns. That's what logic says. You don't do that because in no way does that end well for anybody. If the government showed up at the door and said, I'm taking your guns, this would end extremely bad for this country.
Yeah.
Like maybe the worst possible scenario is if they did that.
But when you say stuff like that, man, I get curious. What would happen if we actually did that?
It would be bad.
Do you think so?
Oh, yeah.
You think we'd see a lot of ATF agents dead on the doorsteps?
I think you'd find a lot of ATF agents say, I'm not going to go do that. I think the government
really though
overthinks how, because they need the military to do that. And the military be like, I am not turning my own people. They're just not.
Wasn't COVID and lockdown the first pass of seeing compliance of our police officers and military though? So, didn't they fail epically?
So that's why I say the logical sense is that they wouldn't do that.
Okay.
When you see what happened during COVID, you're like, huh. No one would say mandating vaccinations for people is a good idea. 5 years ago, we would be like, this is the dumbest thing ever. This does not end well.
Yeah.
But they did it anyway.
Yeah.
And it didn't end well because people are very upset. The country is more divided than ever. But they didn't go after your guns. You don't go after people's guns.
Really?
And I feel like, even there's a lot of police that retired early because they make it sound like all the police were involved. A lot of police took their early retirement. Military conscription rate is down significantly. Right?
Yeah.
People don't want to be a part of this. And I think if they said, hey, everyone, military, we're going to go in and we're going to start collecting the guns, people be like, no, that's my line.
Really?
I am not going to my neighbor's house and going to tell him, knock on his door and ask for his guns.
So you
demand his guns.
You own guns?
Yes.
So I don't know if everyone out there in the Matt Kim podcast community knows this, but I think this would be a good time to get a little bit of revelation. What's your stance on guns? You own guns clearly, so you have to support it at some level. Unpack that for us. What's your level of fidelity to the gun rights movement, if you have any, or your personal stance on gun ownership?
So I didn't own my first gun until maybe 2018 or 19.
Really?
Yeah. It took me a while.
What was the first gun you got?
I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
Just some handgun. And
the cereal was scratched off, guys. He'd given to him in the back of a truck. That's what he said.
I think because I lived in New Jersey and New York for a long time. You can't own guns.
Yeah.
So
gun-free zones, yeah.
Correct. So when I moved down here, I didn't have one. And the first few years, okay, I'm living a life without a gun. You don't really think about it. And then you start going to friends' house and holy shit, there's a lot of guns here.
These guys are packing heat, bro.
Yeah. And in Georgia, people don't understand. In Georgia, if you're a gun lover, you don't have one gun. You have an armory of guns.
Exactly.
Again, you don't go into people's gun houses when they have armories. Most people have huge amounts of guns. And these are not crazy extreme people. Regular family men have guns.
Yeah.
It's a part of the community here. That's what we have. And there's nothing weird about it at all in Georgia.
Yeah. And we actually have several cities and counties in Georgia that require their citizenry to own a gun or at least have a license to own a gun. Right. And I think that's really powerful. Like I said before, I forget who said this quote, but and I'm messing it up. But an armed society is a polite society. So there's some famous guy. Someone can spot check me on that. But I find that quote to be, for me, a catch-all modicum to rule my life by. Is like, if everyone's armed, if everyone is armed, let's add in a qualifier, armed responsibly, then you end up thinking twice about robbing that Walmart or robbing that Target or robbing that Lululemon. Or, we're seeing all these videos of just absolute no fear of just going into stores and stealing stuff. Robert A. Henlon, Beyond the Horizon, an armed society is a polite society. Manners are good when one may have to back up his acts with his life. I think that's a powerful quote.
I like that.
Would you agree with that?
I agree with that completely.
So you're a gun owner. You got your first gun just about 5 years ago or so. So your stance on guns is?
Until you can figure out how to get the guns away from the bad people, then you can go after the responsible gun owners. You're going to go after the responsible gun owners first, and then you're going to figure out a solution for the bad people next, it's logical fallacy.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. I saw a meme one time that of a student who's writing a test, and the teacher was like, "Why aren't you filling out? Why aren't you filling out all the information? You're gonna get an F." And he looked at her and he said, "No, the pencil's gonna get an F." It's kind of like this. It's not a good joke, but it was better in the cartoon.
Wah, wah.
But the point is like there's a lot of blame, right, on the guns, when in reality, maybe it's the person using the tool.
Correct.
That's the way that I see guns. Guns are a tool for a certain specific purpose, self-defense, home defense. And it's the person who's using the tool inappropriately that we should really be focusing on, not the tool itself, because there's no ban on hammers. But frankly, from what I understand, I think hammers kill people every year, right? You're not going to ban hammers, though, are you?
You could be Paul Pelosi. Get hammered.
So I want to sit on this because I actually had a conversation just a couple years ago, and just reminded me of when we were talking about this. So you would say that you're not afraid, and I think it's important that I phrase it this way. Your mental models, your countenance, you don't get afraid when you're hanging out with someone with lots of guns.
Of course
I think there's a lot of people out there, especially in cities, who have no exposure to people who own these things. They're told by the mainstream media that anyone who has a gun is a right-wing nut, right? They're crazy. They're holed up and they're anxious all the time. They're wondering who's going to get them, right? But you would say to anyone out there that you hang out with people who own armories, tons of guns, and it doesn't change you when you're working with them. You don't feel less safe. Is that fair?
I think you trust the people, and once you get to know the people, then you realize that there's nothing to fear. Because good people are good people, and if you put these tools in the hands of good people, well, not much bad that can happen.
And if I were to interject, I would say most people that I interact with who have a plethora of guns, generally they're pretty daggone sophisticated too. They can tell you all about those tools, how those tools work, what situations, how they clean them, how they maintain them. I mean, this is generally, and I'm not going to put everyone in this bucket, but I think it would be a safe assumption to say that generally a registered and legal gun owner is generally a responsible person. Is that a fair equation to put together?
I agree, 100%. When I bought my first gun, and I had one in the house, and my wife was like, I don't think you should have guns.
Is that what she thought about?
Because she grew up in Korea. There's no guns in Korea. So to see like her first gun, she was like, oh my gosh, there's a gun in here. And she's like, I don't know, like maybe you should like take it back. I was like, that's not gonna happen.
I don't think that's how it works, baby.
Yeah. We can't take it back. Like, I don't like this in here. It's dangerous.
You can't just return this thing, baby.
And then summer of 2020 happened, and she goes to me, "Hey, we have guns, right?
Ooh, okay.
Hey, I heard there's like running out of ammo. Should you go buy some more ammo?"
그래?
Yeah, nice. Because all of a sudden things get bad, things get difficult. You have a little fear. And all of a sudden, you want to protect yourself. She turns to me and goes, it's your job to protect us. You know that, right? We have enough guns. We have enough ammo. You need to figure this out.
I love it. I love how Tay says these types of things.
Yeah, she just says it. And now, now I have several. She has no problem with them. We have a baby in the house. Obviously guns stay locked up. And I even have my daughter's first gun ready.
Oh, is it a Walther P22? It's a great entry-level gun, by the way.
It's a 22. Yeah. So very small, compact. Probably teach her how to shoot it when she becomes 10, 11, 12, 13, whatever. Something in that range.
Big fan.
Yeah. So I already have hers.
Nice.
Yeah.
Have you taken your wife shooting?
No.
Oh, you should. We should do a Matt Kim shooting range. I go to the shooting range a lot. So we should have you and your wife go. We should record it. I think it'd be a great silhouette.
She doesn't like loud droning noises.
But she's gonna have to. But she should be able to have to learn how to use it in case there's a home invader and you're not there, right?
Like she doesn't like going to the track. She hates being at the track because the sound of the droning and
Understood.
that just drives her nuts.
Same thing with gun range.
So I'm assuming it would be very similar to the gun range because you got your headphones on. I mean, you got your headset on. Everything is muffled. It's bang, bang, bang everywhere. I feel like she wouldn't enjoy the experience that much. We were playing with like fireworks once and blowing like things up and playing with tannerite, and she didn't like that.
With tannerite.
You don't like playing with tannerite, you're probably not gonna like gun range.
Famous last words right there. Watch this, guys. Watch this. We're messing with tannerite. So I'm gonna push back. I'm gonna say that, and for those out there in the crowd, those listening in the community, let us know in the comments below good reasons why Matt Kim's wife should definitely go to the gun range. I have my own reasons, but some of you guys out there might have better reasons. I think it's absolutely essential that your wife go to the gun range, learn how to at least handle the gun effectively, and be comfortable with it in the chance of her maybe having to use it. And so I'm a big fan of, and so again, some of you guys out there can tell us other good reasons why your wife should check it out. But I think we should definitely do that.
Does your wife?
My wife shot. Like when we first got together, we went to the gun range multiple times. She is interestingly an amazing shot, very accurate. I think there's a common thread for women that they generally just have a stable countenance to them, and they can shoot well within like 5 to 7, 10 meters, which is all you really care about anyway, be accurate. And so I found that women, especially like a caliber of 9mm or 22, can handle the gun pretty effectively well. You just got to show them through the motions and get their comfort level up. So I think Tay should definitely do that. And let us know in the comments below if you believe that Matt Kim's wife should definitely learn how to handle a firearm effectively.
Sounds like a double date.
Yeah, we could do that. We could do that. We could
maybe she'll feel more comfortable if there was another girl there.
Yeah, and I got a pretty big arm. What other guns do you have?
I have a few.
We won't.
No reason to list them on for the internet to find.
Guys, he's got a bazooka. That's what he's really saying. He's got a bazooka.
No reason to list what I have.
So let's pivot. Let's pivot a little bit. We're talking about Brazil being kind of the foreshadowing of potentially America. We have Trump, who essentially this entire story that you told us about Brazil, this incumbent who is very much like Trump, sounds like he got the election stolen maybe. He was pro-gun, all this type of stuff. He wants to run again, or he's been banned until 2030. So
for now,
who
knows how long they extend the kick it down the curb later.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Is Trump pretty? Let's pivot to Trump for a second because the election cycle's starting up, and we're seeing a lot of Trump DeSantis and a lot of Vivek and a lot of other people. Is Trump he's a big 2A guy too, right?
I believe so. I think there was a little bit of a pushback from the 2A community because he wanted to outlaw a little bit of. Why are we looking at things?
What is this?
This is why Tan should learn how to shoot.
Oh, okay. Let's see a video. Okay, what's happening here?
There was a home invader in San Francisco, and then he was wrestling with her husband, so she came down and shot him.
Oh, really?
Why is everything in Chinese?
They were a Chinese couple. See?
Oh, they just start fighting like that?
Yeah, he knocked on the door and then just pushed him in.
Oh, and so the wife comes down and unloads?
Yeah.
Good. Let's see what happens, guys. Not safe for work for children? Probably not. They might blur it out, I guess. They look like they're tasseling, man. They're really fighting it out. Oof. Oh, man. Oh, dude, he's giving them...
And this guy just randomly walked into this guy's house. He don't even have a shirt on. I mean, the homeowner doesn't.
Yeah. Okay, she's coming down. She's like, screw this, bro. You're done. Oh. Go on, boom, 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 boom.
She just...
Whoa, point blank, bro. Well, she just blew out her husband's eardrums at the same time. Look at him. He's like, I can't even hear
Dazed.
shit. Dazed and confused. Well, here's an extreme example for the audience out there and for Matt Kimmage, an extreme example of when you might need one. Maybe this might scare Tay enough into getting one or learning how to use it effectively. I mean, shit, she was like 5 inches from the guy's head.
I mean, that's also like a good thing about living in Georgia. This is San Francisco. This is more likely to happen.
That's true.
In Georgia, you don't randomly walk into someone's house when they're home because you expect this to happen as a robber.
There's a higher chance that the homeowner might own a firearm. Yes.
Extremely high. You're not just, you wait for them to know and be home. You stake it out and you wait for an opportunity to go in there. And maybe you get unlucky and someone is home. But you don't walk into houses knowing someone is there. If this was Georgia and he opened that door and someone's at the door, that guy's running.
Bro.
He's not forcing his way in Georgia because you know, as even the worst of criminals, you don't just go storming into a guy's house.
You don't.
Because there is very high chance there's armory behind you. And that's going to happen.
So whenever a random person that it's clear that there's no context for them to be there, and I see them on the video at front of the door, and this doesn't happen often, but it's happened a couple times, I will answer that door armed.
Of course.
I will go over to my gun safe next to the kitchen, and that's where one of ours is, and I'll get it out, and I'll answer the door, open up a crack, and just make sure they know that, look, there's no fuckery happening today. Like, and they're usually like, would you like to know if Jesus Christ can be your Lord and Savior today? And it's like, get the fuck out of here. Bro, get the fuck out of here.
And, you know, I also keep dogs. I've always had big dogs. So that helps a lot. I think having a dog is a huge deterrent for anything bad to happen in your house because if you're a thief, if you're a bad person, you go for the path of least resistance. No one wants to mess with a big dog. It's just not worth it.
So can we talk about gun-free zones and your thoughts on gun-free zones? It's gun-free zones is almost a misnomer, if we want to put it that way, because it sounds appealing from a political standpoint. It sounds like the right thing you should do, especially if you attach school next to gun-free zone. Makes a lot of logical sense. What's your thoughts on gun-free zones, and are they effective?
Again, you have to figure out a way to get the guns away from the bad people first.
So what's your solution on that? Come on, man.
I don't know.
You don't know?
What's your solution on that? How do you get the guns away? And this is the huge problem, right? When you say bad people, are we talking about...
You don't know if they're bad or not.
Are you talking about just criminals? Are you talking about people that illegally own them? Are we talking about overreaching governments who show up at your door with a gun and say, wear the mask, take the shot? Is that considered bad people? Where do you draw the line?
So here's where I'm gonna. We might have an argument. We might have a conversation, but I'm gonna go to the other extreme because that's where I sit.
Okay,
I sit. There should be zero gun regulation. I think as long as you're 18 years old, everyone and anyone should be able to buy a gun even without a background check,
which is what Georgia currently is. Georgia is one of the few states in the country where you don't have to register them. That you don't need a license to conceal and carry anymore. Brian Kemp took that away, I think, 1 or 2 years ago. You can buy private party legally. So you can have an armory of guns in the state of Georgia and don't have to register anything.
And ain't nobody got to know about it.
And no one ever has to know. We are one of the few states that allows that.
God bless Georgia.
And outside of the city of Atlanta, where most of the violence happens, out in the suburbs and most of Georgia, there's very little gun death.
Right? Absolutely, yeah. Per capita, for sure.
There's very little road rage. You never know who's got a gun. It's not as much crime out in the suburbs as maybe in the cities where it's a little more connected. This is a city. There's always could be more crime. But Georgia is one of those states that kind of believe what you believe, which is...
And let me unpack my rationale. The reason I think that this is the solution is just like we live in a world where there's too many blue-haired sheepdogs, where anyone can claim whatever they want, who they are. I am going to be a coffee cup today, and tomorrow I'm going to be, non-binary, and the next day I'm going to be something else. Anybody can claim anything. We now live in this world. Same thing with gun ownership. We will never know their true mental capacity, their true mental stability, whether they're insane, whether they're on medication, whether they're on the depression, whether they just had an emotional event, whether they had trauma, it's just, whether they're addicted to some substance. Like, it is impossible to control the human element in this equation. And so and because of all these different permutations of whether they're on the spectrum, whether they have a mental issue, whether they're addicted to something. I mean, like, we can try to legislate for each of these permutations of gun ownership. It's impossible. The permutations, just like the pronoun alliance, which is expanding their pronouns to over 1,000 now or whatever, we're going to have 1,000 different permutations of gun owners. So I believe in the extreme, some would call it extreme, which is if you're 18 years old, you can just go buy a gun. Why do I think this is the better solution? You guys can correct me if I'm wrong in the chat or in comments below, but I believe that this would be a common and simple solution to reduce deaths across the board, is that anyone and everyone can own it. What does this assert in the community, in the American zeitgeist? What does this create? An assumption that if you're over 18, there's a higher chance that you will own a firearm. So you probably need to reduce your fuckery, is the way that I look at it. If everyone and anyone can get a gun after 18, then the next time you think about rolling up on that 23-year-old and starting to mess, which we see videos online about, people just messing with each other, it's like, bro, maybe you should think twice, because the law of the land is, as long as you're 18, there's a chance that you can get a gun, no registration, no license, you just own it outright. So that's the way that I look at it. I think it's an overly simplistic view of the gun issue, but let me hear your thoughts on that. Do you think that's too extreme, that any 18-year-old can get it?
Well, let me just add a little bit of question to that. In Georgia, people are raised with guns.
Yeah.
For example, I'm going to teach my daughter how to shoot a gun when she's probably like 10, 11 years old, which is like a pretty common thing to do in Georgia. You teach your kids to be responsible gun owners. It's a part of the society. It's a part of your social and community and family value.
Yep.
To be responsible with your guns. What happens if you take a populace like California who is not familiar with guns and all of a sudden you let them all have guns? You have millions of irresponsible, uneducated gun owners at one time.
Okay.
How it's different when you allow people who responsible gun ownership is a part of their being, of family history, generation that you're taught to be responsible.
Fair enough.
Texas, Georgia, parts of Florida, the Carolinas, Alabama.
Right.
But if you take a place like Washington State, where they are very liberal, not a lot of guns out there, and all of a sudden you give all these people guns, how are they going to react? Maybe they won't be as responsible. Maybe it causes more problems. I don't know.
You're not wrong. It could certainly be that way. However, when you say giving all Californians the ability to buy a gun and them be irresponsible, aren't the criminals irresponsible too?
Correct.
So now we have an irresponsible criminal populace, and now we have an irresponsible regular normie populace who all have guns. I feel like that's a better equation. All these ignoramuses and irresponsible people, the thieves and the criminals and the populace, all have guns. I think it kind of zeroes out. I think it's one of those things that's like, look, you're a dumbass criminal carrying a firearm. You're a dumbass, Joe Blow at home who owns a firearm. You know what? I would think that if the law of the land says that there's a high chance that Joe Schmo nobody, Joe Blow NPC owns a gun, you might want to think twice of being irresponsible thief or irresponsible criminal to go attack that person or go rob them, because they're just as bad and irresponsible with guns as you are.
So if you have a responsible gun owner,
and you can't legislate responsibility, by the way, and I think that's kind of what you're pinpointing here, and I would push against that, because you cannot legislate responsibility. So at the end of the day, why don't we just let your free market go? Let the market decide.
If you take a responsible gun owner and you put them against a irresponsible gun-owning criminal, a responsible gun owner will use their gun to prevent first.
Yes.
As a deterrent.
Fair enough.
And then if push comes to shove, you go. If you take a irresponsible gun owner and a irresponsible criminal, it's just shots fired.
Maybe, yeah. And maybe maybe the criminal will be dead.
And
is that a better net outcome?
In a free market economy, we say, fuck it. Let them figure it out.
Yeah, why not?
As socially responsible society, you're like, maybe we should protect them from themselves. And then I go back to, well, I'm not that guy.
I know you're not that guy. You're a free market guy.
I am. But where's the line?
I think
everyone has a line somewhere.
I think I'm making it clear on this podcast. My line is 18 years old. I think you should be able to buy a gun, and that increases the chances that any 18-year-old that you come across, they're potentially packing heat. And that, for me, would increase the chances, for at least me, I'm just talking about me, nobody else, but that would increase the chances that I am polite with that individual.
So if I was a politician and I was in government, instead of spending money to try to figure out a way to take people guns, instead of trying to teach extreme ideologies, maybe responsible gun ownership should be something taught through schools also.
But we used to do that. There are pictures from the 40s, 50s, 60s where they were teaching gun safety, mostly in the Midwest and southern states. Fair enough, peace. But we can find pictures of children in middle school, elementary school, bringing in their 22 shooter, right, or their small long rifle or something like this. So like we used to have a world in America where gun ownership was more of a mainstay for sure. And so that's the way that I look at it. I think that if you allow everyone, as long as you're over 18, especially since today apparently 12 and 14-year-olds can castrate themselves and cut off their own penis,
which is crazy that you can do one but not the other.
Yeah, you can't smoke, you can't drink, you can't look at prawn, you can't vote, but you can cut off your wee-wee if you'd like. So I feel like gun ownership is a greater good here. So I think you and I might have to agree to disagree, but I think that at 18 years old, and let us know again in the comments, we really like to know your ideas. 18 years old, man, I think you should be able to own any type of firearm you want. It creates a more polite society. And to your argument that the irresponsible people who were never raised around guns in California, maybe they'll just get over it. Maybe it'll take a generation, but for those who are irresponsible and grow up and now have the law, let's say the law land changes and you can get a gun at 18, maybe we'll start seeing an uptick of those irresponsible gun owners buy guns and then become responsible. Go to gun safety training. Go to all these types of things, yeah?
I don't think I disagree with you. I just question how to educate the populace to be responsible. Because even though we allow it, yes, the dumbest of people will eventually off themselves, and that will solve a problem on its problem.
Darwin Awards.
But we still, at least one society, try to encourage people to live the right way.
Fair enough.
And I don't like government coming in and telling you how to live lives.
So maybe we should loosen the gun laws. That's
a
what
really
I'm saying.
slippery slope.
I think we should loosen the gun laws. I think we should make it absolutely easy for anyone to grab it.
Again, I don't think you can loosen the gun laws without including some sort of education and training.
Education and training, absolutely.
By who, though?
There should be education and training. But here's what we do know for a fact. We have decades of history of gun-free zones not working.
Correct.
So we have that data point. Why don't we try an experiment as a national experiment to remove all gun-free zones? Because we have data on gun-free zones. It's clear as day. If you're in a gun-free zone, you have a higher chance of getting killed.
Can you imagine being the politician that made a gun-free zone open to gun ownership, and the first death happens? You will be crucified.
Of course, you're going to be crucified.
So who wants to take that chance?
You're going to be crucified by the mainstream media because
who wants to go on that ledge and be like, I'm the guy that's going to fight for gun ownership, and then a gun death happens because the media is going to be like, that death is on you.
Yeah, of course.
It's such a hard leap of faith to take.
You're not wrong.
For a politician.
You're not wrong, especially in D.C. where it's a gun-free zone and all the politicians who travel in there, live there, are going to be like, oh, it's me. It's like, Frank, I mean, you guys already travel with armed guards anyway in D.C. when you're running around there.
Correct.
Right? So why not make it open anyway? So I can see the argumentation. I can see the pushback, especially for those who are more politically inclined, right? They wouldn't want to ruin that. And certainly, you're not wrong. You would get absolutely crucified.
Annihilated.
Oh, you get annihilated. Yeah,
annihilated.
You get destroyed.
Yeah.
What did you say?
I think I said annihilated.
That's that Korean accent to
Every once in a while it
the
comes out.
Hanguk accent is coming out at will.
Every once in a while it comes out.
So we were talking about Trump. We were talking about gun-free zones. We were talking about Trump being pro Second Amendment, I believe, right? Isn't he in line in league with the NRA and all that?
Yeah, he made a couple of things about bump stocks that people didn't really like, and I don't really understand guns that well to know the difference. I know that he didn't take away guns, and that he lives in areas that allow guns. And I've never heard him say like, "I'm taking your guns." So,
I don't think I've heard that either.
I don't think I've ever heard that either.
I have to bring this up. It's rising in my gut. Did you see Trump's recent interview about Ukraine and him saying that he is going to Russia better look out because Trump will send millions of guns or more ammunition and all that stuff to Ukraine. So
Really?
it's essentially asserting that Trump is pro-Ukraine. Hot take on that. Do you
I
think
didn't see that. From what I remember from the interviews I've seen, he said that I think his hot take was, "I will end the Ukraine-Russia war in 24 hours."
Yes, because he was all about
Negotiation.
Negotiation, and Ukrainians and Russians stop dying. That was his big deal. He wants everyone to stop dying, which I think is where the focus needs to be.
Yeah, I don't know about the clip. Maybe if we find it, then I can react. I haven't heard it.
It was all over
I just
Twitter.
don't have
All over
I just
Twitter the
don't
last
have
couple days.
context. Yeah, but I think the war in Ukraine. I don't know, man.
You think we're going to be ending soon, or it can't?
They're gonna drag it on forever.
So we're pivoting a little bit here to the war in Ukraine. We saw Zelensky in that picture that went viral of him standing out in the cold, looking like NATO's giving him the cold shoulder, right?
That's what it looked like.
It looked like that. So it seems like they're running out of ammunition. They're running out of, let's just say, popular sentiment is waning. People are kind of getting over the whole Ukraine thing.
It's starting to get really expensive, and
we can't fix roads. We can't do jack shit in America, but we're willing to give Ukraine $18 billion. Is a common theme that I think people are kind of like, what the fuck is going on here?
I think the number is at like 200 or 300 billion plus, which is crazy.
It's crazy the amount of money that we're giving them.
And that they can't even track it. I tried to do this experiment. Okay, how much money is being given to Ukraine? And I went through, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 pages of Google, clicking through all these different articles from all the different sites, trying to do my own math to try to figure out how much money really is it. There is no way to calculate. It's impossible.
But it's crazy.
It's impossible.
Man. It's crazy. You're not wrong.
I went so deep in like different government paperwork, press releases, through the White House, through the State Department, through the military, went to their sites, all over. I crawled as far as I could. I cannot come up with even a best guesstimate.
It's crazy. And this is how the meme goes. The meme is like, we can't track trillions of dollars. It's with a T. We can't track all these things that we're doing, trillions of dollars. But if you don't put that $3.55 on your tax return, the IRS is going to be fucking knocking on your door.
It's crazy, isn't
like
it?
The imbalance of responsibility is absolutely nuts. Like if you don't do your taxes right, they're going to come after you with guns. But we can't track trillions of dollars that we're giving to some other country, guys. That's craziness.
So talking about Trump, I want to interview Donald Trump.
Yes, that's where I wanted to go. I wanted to go with where are we headed with all this? Interviewing Donald Trump is something that Matt posted earlier. To unpack this a little bit for us, why do you want to interview the most hated man in America, but at least by, let's say, some political standards?
I feel like, number one, it'd be great for the program.
For sure.
So no lie there. Number two, I think Trump maybe not needs me, but needs that interview of that type more.
So if I can extrapolate what you just said, what you mean is Trump needs an everyday man conversation.
He needs to speak to someone that's just a normal or from the people, of the people, that is of maybe Asian descent.
Oh.
No, I can't find any podcast or episode or interview done by a president and someone Asian American.
Wow. You just made me think for a second. You're not wrong. I haven't seen that either.
And every time I post anything on Instagram about mentioning the name Trump or alluding to Trump, I get flooded with comments. You know, Trump hates people like you.
That's like when I read that stuff, when I hear that stuff, that's crazy to me.
It is such a big part of the narrative. Trump hates you because you're Asian. As soon as if he becomes president again, he's gonna kick you out of the country. I get that all the time. But that's like a huge narrative that's being put out there.
Absolutely.
If he were to sit down with someone like me and we're able to have an honest, real conversation, I think that would instantly change that narrative. You can't say that anymore because no one else has done it.
So here's my first question. Do you think Trump would give you an honest conversation? Because he's really good at sound bites.
Correct.
He's really good at sticking to the narrative, sticking to his points. And I wonder if he would give you the humility and the time and the patience and actually give you a conversation, or he would just stick to his talking points.
I think that's my responsibility in the questions that I ask. Number one. So I think that responsibility falls on me.
Would you hold him? Would you nail him to the wall though? Because you might ask him questions and he might dance around it. Would you have enough courage to be like, Mr. President, I fucking asked you this question. Like, answer the bloody question.
I think with a manner of respect, because at the end of the day, he's still a former president. You have to respect the office, whether or not you like a person. I think you have to respect the office of the president.
Peace, fair enough.
So with a manner of respect, I would hope that I'm able to ask some questions and he would answer them honestly. If he doesn't, and I don't want to ask him the questions everyone else has asked him, because you can find answers to certain political questions or political stances anywhere on the internet. I want to ask him, like, what was it like trying to raise your kids in that political environment? I think that'd be a really interesting question.
Yes.
You have your youngest son, Barron, who is growing up and all he hears in the news is Orange Man bad.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that in your life? And I think in asking these types of questions, you get an idea of who this man really is. And I think in doing the number one demographic that Donald Trump needs is suburban moms.
They do hold purchasing power.
And if you're able to ask him questions about his family, about raising his family, because I think he's done a good job with his kids. We've had this discussion before. When you look at Joe Biden and his kids, especially Hunter, you're like, what the fuck happened there?
Can I just sit on that for a second? I can't believe the recent Jean Claire, whatever her name is, the White House press secretary. I can't believe in the latest clip when the reporters were asking her about the cocaine, she literally was like, "They haven't figured it out."
Yeah.
Are you come on?
They have more cameras in there than Las Vegas.
Bro, they have tighter security in the White House than any other apparatus.
Anywhere in the world.
No, yeah, come on.
Ooh, I don't know who it is.
Come on. Like, can we just sit on this for a second?
It's such a blatant lie. It's insulting.
It is insulting. Like, we can get away with all the other bullshit that's happened over the last 3 years in lockdown, all the lies about COVID, vaccines, mask mandates, all this bullshit, and the usual standard fare of the political toxicity that happens, right? Like, peace. Like, that's table stakes. But, dude, like, can you really pull the wool over the sheep's eyes here, man? Can you really come to us and be like, there's cocaine found in the White House. We got videos of Hunter, sniffing, doing the usual, let's say, behavior patterns of someone who's putting stuff up their nose. It's clear as day, and they can't tell us who the fuck left it there with all that camera, all that security. Like, I feel like it's moments like these, Matt, that these are going to be the straws that break the camel's back. But I don't think it's egregious enough. What do you think?
They don't cover up something like this with this many lies, this many distractions for it just to be Hunter. If it was Hunter, they'd be like, it was Hunter. And people are like, oh, yeah, of course it's Hunter.
Oh,
and they would have went, and it would have moved on. The world would have moved
deeper.
On. It's someone that is more impactful than Hunter, which is why you cover it up. And they say, oh, yeah, it was probably Hunter. And they leak this. They leak this picture so everyone thinks it's Hunter, and it's all part of the distraction. The reality is, whoever really owns that cocaine, it's not Hunter. It's someone they really have to cover.
Will, I'm talking to a game master here. This guy's looking the meta of the meta. He's looking outside. Like, I never thought of it that way. So what you're saying, if I can recalculate this, is that the person who left the cocaine is someone far more important and influential than Hunter.
Correct.
Hunter is being used as a patsy almost, kind of like, an example. And they're leaking just enough to create causation, to create, the right timing, to make it look pretty apparent that it could be Hunter.
Yeah, and because nobody cares because Hunter.
Exactly. And so,
silly Hunter, there he goes again.
Yeah, silly rabbit.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone's like, look at him, and people are mad. Yeah, I can't believe you're trying to cover for Hunter. But people are livid.
But the bottom dollar is it's someone else.
It's someone much more important.
Dude, that's some 4D chess there, Matt.
Who it is, I don't know. It could be... it could be Joe. It could be someone just as influential or even more influential. I don't know.
So let me ask you two questions. Do you think Jill and President Biden, do you think they know who it is?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they know. And a father knows what his kids are up to.
Oh,
even if you're not directly involved heavily in their lives, it's parent intuition. You know what your kids are doing.
Yeah.
He knew Hunter was doing all this crazy shit. He knows he's the fuck up. He knows he's the scapegoat. And it's a role he plays very well. Anytime something bad happens, oh, silly rabbit, there goes Hunter again. Yeah. There he is.
So I'm just going to pull on this thread a little bit more. So Hunter has a child out of wedlock with, I think, an exotic dancer or something like that. And there's been a little bit in the news about President Biden not acknowledging this. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on him not acknowledging his grandchild? Is that an issue or is that a non-issue?
Well, and not only that, but they came to a settlement. The kid is not allowed to use the Biden name,
which is crazy, but okay.
That they've negotiated the monthly alimony or the monthly child support payment. Yep. It went from 20 grand a month to 5 grand a month or whatever it is. So they reduced that. And they just want it to disappear.
Yeah.
I think it's weird.
Do you think it's...
But your grandkid.
Let me ask... Yeah, that's where I was going. For Matt Kim, do you think that's the right thing for him to do?
No.
Political considerations aside.
As a father, as a grandfather, you are responsibility for your bloodline. Regardless of they are in wedlock, out of wedlock, intentional, unintentional, whatever the reason may be, that is your progeny. And you have a social responsibility. You have a higher responsibility to take care of them. And it's not like you're a family of not means. If you were not the Bidens and you were poor.
Yeah, you wouldn't even be in the news though, right?
And you can't take care of, your son's daughter or kid with the stripper. And you're like, I can't support it. I can't afford it. I get it.
If this was Trump's side, they'd be grilling him for months on this.
But if you are the Bidens and you have pretty much unlimited money at this point to go the way they are with this child, it's unfortunate for that child. Imagine that conversation she's going to have when she gets older. Like, who's your dad? Who's your grandfather? Oh, he's the president. No, he's not. How come you're not a Biden?
Yeah, I mean, that's rough.
Yeah, why are you lying to everyone at school? Yeah, that's not true.
That's rough.
Oh, but no, my dad, I swear is. Oh, no, then why are you poor? Right? Poor kid.
Yeah, that's terrible, man.
That's terrible.
I'm thinking about it right now. And the reason I bring this up is I think speaking of 4D chess, I wonder, because you're good at extracting yourself out of what's going on. I wonder, is the Democrat Party slowly turning on the Bidens? I only say this because of what the two things we just talked about. Number one, they're letting loose and they're letting more shade drop on the Hunter Biden, which is, he's part of the political establishment. This is not a good thing. You shouldn't be talking shit about your own installed puppet and his progeny. And then we have this story about, President Biden not giving love to his granddaughter. Like, there's nothing positive that can outcome from a conversation around this. So based on these two data points alone, is the establishment, is the mainstream media, are the powers that be, are they starting to turn on the Bidens because they're ineffective as their puppet role? Are we starting to see some of the cracks in this facade here?
I think they're done with him.
Do you think so?
I think so. I think they're teeing up. They're going to let him. I think I saw the stat where the amount of money so far the Biden has spent on their political campaign, it's like nothing.
Oh, yeah, I saw that too.
They're spending no money.
Yeah,
they're not even investing.
They spent like $1 million, whereas the same point in time when Barack Obama was going for re-election, he spent like $11 million. I think I read that in an article.
Correct. Yeah. They are not spending any money on him. They know he's unpopular. So they're just going to let him ride out and bring someone shiny in his replace. Maybe Big Mike. Maybe a Big Mike and Gavin Newsom ticket.
Oh, man.
Would be an interesting ticket for them.
I would love to see a Big Mike.
Because you get rid of Biden, who seems old and unpopular, and then you bring in someone very popular like Mike, and you bring in someone that speaks really well and sharp and slimy like Newsom.
Like a Pence was to Trump. He was a slimy guy.
And then all of a sudden, you have actually a pretty solid ticket. I think that ticket is bullshit, but it's a very solid ticket for them. So if I was the liberal
chess master,
I would consider that as the ultimate ticket right now.
Okay, so if we can put a stick in the mud for Matt Kim, you would say that the mainstream media is giving up on Biden's and they're preparing to insert a new puppet into that position. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Ooh, I like this. I like this. I can't wait to see if this comes true, guys.
Because the media wants to be right, at least somewhat. They want the clicks. They want the views. They want someone that gets people to engage with their content. Absolutely nobody cares about Biden at all. It's either negative content about Biden or nothing. He could cure cancer, which he said he was going to do. That he was going to cure cancer.
Right, I remember that too.
He literally said that at the State of the Union address, that he was going to cure cancer. He also said he was going to cure COVID, which he never did either. Even if he does that, no one will care about this guy anymore. He's done.
Did you see the pictures of him at the beach?
And nobody cares.
That was one of the most telling pictures.
Absolutely nobody has any interest in this guy whatsoever.
I find that to be absolutely crazy.
Most popular president in the history of the world.
Apparently. So.
81 million views.
Yeah. Apparently.
81 million votes.
Yeah.
He can show up at a public beach, stand there, and nobody will even care.
Nobody flocks to him.
Nobody
wants an autograph.
He is that unpopular.
Nobody wants to even do selfies.
Yeah.
He's the president of the daggum United States,
Yeah.
bro.
Yeah.
Like even for someone like me who sometimes has no empathy threshold and no ego to speak of. Like if I was at that beach and I saw Biden, you know I'd be bum rushed by Secret Service because I'd be walking over there with pace. And I'd be like, oh, yo, I want to get a picture with Biden. Nobody did that. They had video cameras on, and he's just like walking, pulling a chair slowly.
Nobody cares.
Bro, do we not live in the fucking Twilight Zone?
There was, I think it was in South Carolina, or maybe North Carolina. Trump did a rally, and of course, tens of thousands of people showed up. Biden, I think 2 weeks later, did a rally in the same town.
Yep.
And it was like, I don't know, it was 15 people, 30 people.
There was a lot of empty chairs, man. Okay, so we're talking. We went on this tangent. So interview Donald Trump.
Yes,
that is intriguing idea. It would be great if we could get the community to rally around it. Maybe we can find some of those what are they called, the super PACs. Get connected with them and see if we can get an interview. I think it would be really cool. I don't believe though, and here's why I'm going to stand on this statement. I don't believe Trump would give you a fair interview. I don't think he would. I think he would stick to this. I think unless you like literally game planned the interview where you would absolutely make sure that every question had no political ties, because once you get him into political narrative mode, like you won't be able to get him out. It's got to be about like the uber personal, the uber family, really deep in the personal world. I think is where you have to keep him.
I think I'm not greedy. I think I understand that it's probably impossible to sit down a presidential candidate and get 1 hour of honest answers on what I want. 90% will be what he wants to say. I think if I can get out of there with one really good question that he didn't expect, he didn't feel like he was going to answer, and I can get one from him, I think that's a win, to be honest. I think that I'm going to get 1 full hour of just honesty constantly, I think that's impossible, regardless of who the politician is.
Fair enough.
I think my goal is to get one moment.
So I know that you always do a lot of thinking about this. So out of all the questions that you've considered that you would ask the President Donald Trump, what would be the most important, or at least the heaviest question that you would ask him?
I think most questions end up being political. Like if I asked him about how would you figure out a way to bring the country back together, because it's always
he would go into the rhetoric.
And I think you get a very political answer. think it would be about, it has to be about family. I think once you get to know the family man of a person, you really get to understand who he is as a person. So how he handles his family, how he's handling success, what he did to raise his kids the way he did, being, a billionaire and being busy with business, he still was able to raise really solid children. And some may argue not, but let's be real. He did a pretty good job.
If you were to weigh his children without the political ties and without the notoriety, just on their job functions and job roles themselves, those kids all ended up in pretty, let's just say, influential, highly lucrative positions anyway.
All of them are well-spoken. All of them seem very smart. All of them have their own families. And if that's kind of your gauge, if my children can have successful families, that's a win. And his kids have successful families.
I think that's where I would focus the questions as well.
I think that's what I'd be most interested in. And I think that would give him the opportunity to show his human side a little bit, as well as let people that be like, oh, this guy's a misogynist, this guy like hates women, like gives you an idea of like who he really is. So that's where I would want my focus to be. Also, like, there is a huge community of Asians that are very upset that you called it the China virus.
Okay.
Not me.
I get it. Yeah.
And there's a lot of people on the left who use that to trigger other Asians to be like, they hate people like you.
Well, we know now it's a China virus.
We do. How can you at least respond or comment to that to let them know that it wasn't a message of hate, but really a message of, hey, China, the country, has kind of fucked us here.
Yeah, well, we've had millions of people die.
It's at least an opportunity to explain himself and speak to maybe other Asian Americans who are like, I kind of like what he says. I kind of like his ideas. Yes, I get it. But that really bugged me. There's a lot of people out there, especially Asian, that think that. There are.
Is there still a large contingency? I wouldn't assume that.
I think so. I think there's people that just can't let that go.
So we have a special guest in the studio today, who's Asian, who has been watching the podcast, and I'm not going to put any words in anybody's mouth here, but certainly this podcast has been resonating with thousands of Asian Americans or Asians all over the world. We're getting inbound globally about this, and so do you feel like a lot of this podcast is specifically targeted towards Asians, or is it agnostic to that, and we just because of the fact that we're Asian and we're Korean American, that we're receiving that type of feedback?
Yeah, I don't feel like I am targeting Asian Americans at all.
Because the only reason I bring that up is because we receive comments that's like, hey, you're just playing to the pipe, or you're trying to fill this niche. It's like, yes, clearly we're trying to fill the niche of Asian commenters in this world.
I think it's just we happen to be Asian, happen to be Asian American. I think the content is for everyone. We get messages from all over the world, and
here's the question that I wanted to bring up. Do you think Asians should support Donald Trump?
I think people should support whoever they want, but I support Donald Trump.
Let me ask again. Do you think Asians should support Donald Trump?
I think Asians...
nail you to the wall.
I think Asians tend to be more socially conservative. I think family values are more conservative. They tend to be more fiscally conservative. And the idea that a huge population of Asians are extremely liberal in their voting is weird to me.
Oh, why?
Like, it doesn't make sense. Why do you vote liberal, but everything else about you is conservative?
Do you think it's the ideals of core liberalism of like, leave me alone, let me live my life? Do you think that's the overriding narrative that has Asians who vote liberal, or is it something else?
I think it's because the news is liberal. The Asian news is liberal, and and even the churches are becoming very liberal in their political ideology.
You're not wrong.
So their whole world is saying, hey, like the right, they're pretty racist. And they're like, yeah, they hate me. You're right. And you vote for the left. But if they really sat down, like, well, do we like this trans stuff? No. Okay. Do we like the government telling us what to do? No. Do we like being censored? No. Do we like paying more taxes? No. Then you're like, wait a second. Maybe, but no, but they told me that.
Yeah, the talking heads told
but they told me they're racist, so yeah, I'm going to vote this way. It's a weird thing. I think more and more Asians are waking up. I think there's a larger community of people going, yeah, do you know what? Racism, it's not really the biggest problem in our lives.
Truly.
And slowly, one by one by one. But I think it takes time.
Yeah. So like I was saying, we have a Korean American in here taking notes on this podcast. He wants to create a podcast on his own. So we like having people part of the community who want to get engaged. Really appreciate him being in here. I don't want to shout out his name. I didn't ask for permission to throw him out there. But it's just great to have community members who are Asian who are listening to this thing, and it's powerful to see that you're encouraging other people to do likewise and speak of their truth. So I just wanted to call that out.
Yep. Thank you, everyone, for showing up today. I don't know. It's one of those days where we talked about Brazil, which is, I don't know. I've been thinking about it all night because I've been going down the rabbit hole, and it's crazy. And then you think we jumped into Trump, and that's like such a different thing. And then the election cycle is going to start, and this country is going to get even more polarized than ever. The closer we get to election, the more they will work overtime to divide us. And in doing so, I think we really need to figure out a way to stick together.
I agree.
We've said this many times. Most people live somewhere in the middle. We're not that far apart. And they're going to do everything they can to just split us apart in every direction. We just got to be conscious of that.
I agree. And if we can get Mr. Donald Trump to be on the Matt Kim podcast, I know that you would ask him a lot of questions around family. But for those out there who are listening and watching, let us know in the comments, what question would you ask Donald Trump? What question is burning on your heart that you think Donald Trump should answer? Because if you could get that answer, maybe, just maybe, society would be a better place. Who knows?
Thank you, Peter.
Always good being here.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Yo!
Boom.
Good stuff. Good. Well, good.